presentation. And I'm told we're going to get 3 for the price of 1 here. So you have on your list Devin Brundage. He's the General Manager of Central Nebraska Public Power and Irrigation District. And he's also going to be joined by Scott Dicke, the Irrigation Operations Manager, and by Cory Steinke, the Hydraulic Operations Manager for Central Public Power and Irrigation District. So turn it over to Devin.
All right, thanks, John. Yeah, trifecta, and didn't even have to buy a ticket. So, lots of projects that are occurring. Heard a lot today about all of the technology improvements, what's coming down the pike. Our world has changed in the last 80 years, and the challenge is finding ways to make the water supply sustainable for the next 80 years. There's a lot of changes that we can adopt, and there's ways that we can go about making these things occur. There's positive ways, and the way we used to do it, maybe in the 90s, there's a lot of disconnect between what we thought was surface water, what we thought was groundwater, how these water supplies interacted and worked together. Mr. Director Riley did a great job earlier today, if you happen to catch his presentation describing maybe a new way forward. And that is part of our mission at the district, is to bring all of these benefits to bear for right here in central Nebraska. So the solution is easy. It's an IPA. So I knew people will be thinking about where they're going to head after the conference, and maybe Lost Way might be on your agenda, but sorry, no free beer today. It's about infrastructure partnerships, projects, and agreements. So a little acronym that we can use, and it really is the focus of the strategic plan that our Board of Directors has put forth to make sure that we are finding the best way to serve the folks that we have long served for the next 80 years as well. And we have to continue to strive to find ways to manage, work with folks, maintain that infrastructure that has been so important and will be so important down the road for our future. So with that, part 1 is Scott giving us some background, some data, and some information on the water itself.
Hopefully, I know some folks are always interested in what Lake McConaughey looks like, and right now there's a lot of sand out there. It's a big beach, and so even a few folks here in the room are asking, well, is there enough water for next year? Well, Tyler's going to talk more about the water supply later on, but one of the things I'll talk about here is our draft 2022 water year releases out of McConaughey. And again, this is natural flow and storage. See if I can find it. So this is a pie chart of water that went out of Lake McConaughey. The red is environmental regulatory winter releases. CNPPID, we had 20% of the releases out of Lake McConaughey. And other irrigation canals that are supported through McConaughey. And of course there's gains and losses. At the end of the day, there's a loss. So this is the pie chart of Lake McConaughey. So where is this? So here I'm going to start with CNPPID, 20% of the water. Right here where we are. We've got Kearney County, Phelps, Gosper. We serve irrigation customers. Our irrigation customers are Dawson, Lincoln County. Other irrigation canals out of McConaughey are served in Buffalo County, Dawson County, Lincoln, and just a smidge up here in Keith. Now the red part here, I didn't try to map out because I'm scared. I don't know where that all leads. It leads to a line down here and through here and all the way through, and all I can say is that there's a lot of water that comes out for other people than CNPPID. Now, when is it released? The blue line here is when water was released during the irrigation season. So April to September would be that time frame. If you'll notice, there's a pie here. That's for environmental account releases. That helps support Central's FERC license. So those are all things that are coming out during the summer. That's when the lake's getting low. That's when people are trying to get their boat in. People are always asking a lot of questions. Where's it going? Who's using it? So when you're down here and you're looking at this pie chart, and you know that this is your sliver, this is what you're able to work with, then the questions are, where is it? What's it doing? So this is CNPPID's canal diversions and deliveries from 1970 to 21. The green line here is the diversions. The lighter blue line here is the deliveries. So as you can see in the 70s, it's continually got a trend of going down. There's less diversions all the time when you're dealing with this 20%. Now, if you start here in 1970, you can see it trends up and down. It's wet and dry. And then I've got a red circle here in the year 2000, up until today. And so what we're seeing here is a continuation of less diversions. But right in here, we're also seeing less deliveries. Where this has been consistent along here, we start to see less deliveries. Why? People are getting better at what they do. We've got efficiency improvements. This is just on Central's acreage. We've got 108,000 acres right now, 107 is where it's been. And so we take just 2003 to 21. If I go back to actually 2000, there were 177 pivots on Central's system. Today we've got 705. Some of that's in sandy soil. Some of it's in maybe not quite sandy. But when you look at that efficiency gain, you're starting to see achievements by the producers, because we had years where there was less water. We needed to make those improvements, and it's continuing on. And so, we've got a decrease in gravity irrigated acres at 42,500. So it's improving. Then the next question is in Tri-Basin, the guys and the irrigators are, hey, what about recharge? Incidental recharge. It's a big component. It's the big amount. All the water professionals here, when you go around the country, we get asked about the big blue dot. And what is that? Why is it there? Why do we have the big blue dot? Well, right here. This is the red line, the incidental recharge. I took the same time frame here. The green is our deliveries, or diverted area. The blue is our deliveries. But what's consistent here is this red line. It goes up and down just a little bit. Now there's a little dip in here, right here, 2005 to 2009. We see that there is a reduction in diversions and deliveries, and the incidental recharge went down. Well, the irrigation season was cut shorter those years. There was just less water in the canal to help recharge. So if we take just a tougher look at what this is doing, I'm going to circle back here to these 2010, 11 years to now. We've got a very 100,000 acre feet of incidental recharge, 80,000. Here's our points. Again, 05 to 09, you see this dip. There was less water in the canal for a period of time, less time to recharge. But now we start to look at these years right here, 2010, 11. And I threw a trend line in on this. And I could change it to logarithmic, linear. Basically, it could go up a little or down a little, but it's very consistent. So even though we are diverting less, delivering less, our incidental recharge is remaining consistent. So it's a big component. We talk about it all the time. Our partners and projects that we're working on. So incidental recharge. The recharge is so important for our regulatory IMPs. The imported water supply credit that's at the Republican. It maintains the high water table here in central Nebraska. That's a reduction in pumping costs for all our producers. And if you take that over 80 years, that's a lot of savings. That's a big economic generator for us. It's important. You know, there's the incidental recharge again has remained consistent, even with the reduction in diversions and deliveries. But now with this, we're seeing how important it is to the producers to keeping that water table high. And so we started working with folks on excess flows, diverting excess flows for recharge, intentional groundwater. And this is where our water service agreements go to. We've got the Phelps system, Phelps Canal, Cottonwood Ranch, that's DePruitt, Johnson, Waterfowl Protection Area, Bunk. Come over to the E65 system, Elwood Reservoir, Cottonwood Ranch, Cottonwood WPA, Victor, and there's one here. Another very important one, the PRD. So now we're looking at intentional recharge. We can do that because we have the infrastructure. And so how much is this? We saw in the previous slides that the incidental recharge is, you know, bouncing around that 85 to 95,000 acre feet a year. Well, since 2011, intentional recharge is about 200,000 acre feet to our region. That's good. A lot of people wish they had something like that. Elwood, a lot of water has been put in Elwood. That helps a lot of people. It helps everyone in our region. We're fortunate. And we're excited to help. We're excited to be part of it. You know, when we're looking at our intentional recharge from excess flows, I'm going to get back to the IPA. We've got the infrastructure. Over time, we've got the partnerships. And we've got the agreements, you know, the pre-2023. And it's taken time, you know. It's taken time for people to see how it works. You know, gosh, are we recharging in the winter? It's a lot of work. You know, you got guys out there you're worried about them. They're chipping ice, working on gates. Can you get it to where it's wanted? Yes. There has been improvements all through the system for winter recharge. So these are the exciting things that we have going on. And this is what we've done so far, pre-2023. And we've heard Director Riley talk about the South Platte Canal, or the Perkins County Canal. Again, the investments in infrastructure, the investments in our future, in our location, we are in a great place. I'm going to turn it back over here to Dicke and talk a little more about it.
All right, definitely should have coordinated a little bit more with Director Riley. Get to see a little bit of the same thing that we talked about before, but infrastructure. Where would we be without the infrastructure that was created 80 years ago? The Lake McConaughey system, the central system by itself, not including what was the Platte Valley Public Power and Irrigation system back in the day, about $43 million of investment in 1940. If you think about that, Director Riley said canal and reservoir, $600 million. And what that investment looks like today, it's a lot of money. I can't imagine what 43 million looked like to the folks back in 1940. But without it, and the vision and the foresight and the work that they went through, it was not an easy project to get through. The history is very colorful. If you spend some time on our website, go back, we've got some very interesting history. There were folks that thought the Tri-County system was the thing to do, and there were folks that thought it was the wrong thing to do. At the end of the day, today, if the system wasn't built the way it was, including Lake McConaughey, and that ability to store, we wouldn't have what is estimated at over $1 billion of economic activity a year, just from the delivery of the water, but also those secondary economic benefits that come from it. So the same can be really thought about when we talk about sustainability and how we can not only use the infrastructure we have today, but parlay that into new infrastructure, when we have the opportunity and we have the window to make it happen, to make it happen. And that's what Director Riley talked about. We have the opportunity, the timing's right, and I think we have the motivation to make some of this happen. So this is much of Director Riley's slide, but I modified it slightly to focus really in our area, because the plumbing's important. We talked about the South Platte Canal, and that's great. Director Riley talked about how it could be used here in the valley to help supplement our operations. And I think this is the single biggest project that we can do to achieve sustainability. But it's not just that one. It's our partnerships and our infrastructure right here. You're going to hear Scott talk about some of the infrastructure projects that we have going forward that add on to this and get us to a place where I think we can really, from McConaughey to Minden, continue to provide all of these economic benefits long into the future. Bringing water here in a sustainable manner so that everybody's irrigating every year. And we can say goodbye, hopefully, to those 2000s of allocations and need. So. Talked about all the people that are beneficiaries of this project, not only the ag and irrigation, the hydropower, the lakes, the recreation, all of the benefits that Central has always been about for the last 80 years. More so in recent years with the additional ones. Recreation, I kid that recreation really wasn't much of a deal back in the 1940s because you pretty much ate, slept, got up, and went back to work. And so things change over time, and we have to know that if we take the right steps, we can continue to provide that. This is an interesting graph. So this is just the irrigation season for Central in 2021. Where did the water come from? South Platte was important. The director talked about the fact that if it doesn't continue to show, it does turn into a bigger demand on Lake McConaughey. Lake McConaughey serves a lot of people that you just heard Scott talk about. And we have to find ways to make it go as far as it can so that we're doing everything that we can every year. That piece of South Platte River water is just showing up. I think one of the things that we miss is if Central's system would have been built without Lake McConaughey, we'd have a canal and we'd have some regulating reservoirs and some irrigation infrastructure. But without the vision, and I think it was what caused part of the consternation in building the project, this huge reservoir upstream, we would not have that sustainability that we even have today. The ability to store that water. So when we talk about the South Platte Canal and Reservoir, I like to call it the South Platte Reservoir and Canal. The ability to store that water in the off-season is a game changer. You guys are well aware of the plumbing perhaps, but I'll go through a little bit of it. That intricate plumbing system. Lake McConaughey stores it, but it is fully conjunctively managed, right? That water comes through a system at NDPD's part of the world up in by Lake McConaughey through the siphon, provides cooling water benefits for Gerald Gentleman, makes hydroelectric energy, comes back. We have supplemental agreements for Glendale canals that help work with those folks. Comes through our entire system, provides hydroelectric benefits, recreational benefits, recharge benefits, irrigation benefits, all of that from top to bottom. But water exchanges hands multiple times through there. So that plumbing provides opportunities. And new plumbing can provide new opportunities. So Director Riley talked about where that might be placed. Now we're a little bit further. I went and got the report, and this is it, right, Director Riley? This is exactly how it's going to look at the end?
Probably not.
Right. So he was much more judicious and said, could be pipelines, could be, he's right. There'll be some engineering decisions to be made about what's best. I thought it was kind of neat that they showed a concrete lined canal up through the edge of Colorado at least. So they were thinking good. But this reservoir and the plumbing, and this is, again, just a depiction of what the report writers thought might make a lot of sense. If you can plumb that right back into the canal system, you never have to experience the losses. It's clean water coming into the system, and it's already plumbed into the infrastructure that we can parlay that extra value into. And I appreciated Director Riley's 100,000 acre-foot prediction. I think there were some other pieces in the report that said, well, if you don't get all of it, or if they find a way to snag a little bit more, either way, it's a big number. It's an important number. Again, 100,000 acre feet can provide our irrigation needs. But again, with the state being a partner in this, we can find ways to use the plumbing to our advantage. We talk about Platte River flows and issues in the choke point. You're going to hear about more of those probably in the months to come. Can those problems be addressed with extra infrastructure? When we learn to use the tools at our hand, we can overcome a lot of the obstacles when we're working together. So. Next part, partnerships and agreements. So the PA, long-term recharge agreements. So Scott led into going forward, we have developed a structure of recharge agreements for the next 10 to 15 years to bring a lot of water to a place that makes a lot of sense. So just for most of the crowd probably understands the mechanics of recharge, but basically this is a kind of simplified depiction. We provide irrigation water, we provide intentional recharge, so think about irrigation being on a field here, maybe up in on the tablelands, but we also provide irrigation not so far up on the tablelands in different kinds of soils, and those result in different abilities to do recharge. And so we'll come back to this, kind of put this in the back of your head. All of these affect river flows. So you have all of these connections and things that we didn't want to try to connect 30 years ago. But today we sit down, we can work together, I think, to supply all the needs, make sure everybody has water every year. So those recharge agreements, working with the state, Tri-Basin, and Central Platte NRD, the Platte River Program, all those partners come together to say this is a good thing to do for everybody in the valley. This is part of what you'll hear about later on, this larger look, a different way to sit down and look and supply the needs of folks while we work together. And it's a big undertaking. There's a lot of history there, but I think we're making good progress, and I think we can achieve that sustainability. Seen this 1,000 times. Scott talked about the blue dot. Again, it's good to refresh our memories as to where the rest of the country, Kansas and Texas and Oklahoma, hopefully they can look at us and say, oh, here's a way to think about this a little bit differently. Drilling in a little bit closer, and I'll lay these canals over top. Notice, remember the groundwater mechanics picture. There's places that you're close to the river that the water goes in and hits a stream, you saw the little line. There's places like here, and even up in here where your canal has reached a higher elevation, that I have this ability to put some storage underground. And that leaks to both sides, right? That recharge from that big bubble, I'll back up. From that big bubble goes all directions, right? Provides benefits to both the Republican and the Platte from this vantage point, but is a method by which we can manage the resource. And that's what's important. The ability to bring lots of water down here when it's plentiful, and making sure that we have that ability to find ways to make the surface water supply go on. Central Platte NRD participates in this recharge project. These folks up in here say, well, gee, they're providing resources and finances to put water down here. Yes, it's good for them. Their ability to continue to pump groundwater is predicated on the ability to make sure that there's ample supplies that feed the river. Tri-Basin NRD, obvious participants. Up and down the river, the state has a vested interest in making sure that water is managed sustainably from top to bottom. And the program, the folks that benefit directly. That's right, all of these folks, from putting water in the mound, the ability to have regulatory certainty that you can continue to pump groundwater. Somebody here, somebody here, somebody here, somebody here pumps water because we have found a way to manage the supply through surface water and groundwater integration. Folks downstream even get to enjoy that benefit. The NRD continues on through that the over-appropriated area. But can we achieve a state where we can effectively get to fully appropriated? That would provide certainty that what we do for irrigation goes on and on and on. And that ability to develop that sustainable model through all of these projects and partnerships is what this is all about. Those folks out there even get to enjoy the value, that recharge you saw in here. Just by operating the systems, the water flowing through the systems provides benefits here. These folks are interested in making sure that we're doing a good job in managing the resource, making sure that we're effectively benefiting the entire valley. That just all fits on top. And I won't go over this again except to say that this is the beginning, not the end. The next 10, 15 years of recharge agreements give us the opportunity to sit down with our partners and develop places, and I think we're looking at places further east to continue to bring more and more of that water down here that benefits everybody from McConaughey to Minden. That is the goal. And our ability to do that through all of these means is what we're all about. And our board should be commended for everything that they have done in the last number of years to help us get to that point and achieve that. So I have another obligation, so if there's any questions on this piece, the next piece is going to be back in infrastructure for Scott. And then Cory's going to wrap this all up in a really nice little bow on this unified planning discussion.
As Devin mentioned, he will have to move on, so are there any questions for him before we go on to the next section?
Great.
How is the incidental recharge calculated? Just from grants and loss, or is it from well measurements?
So we meter every turnout, and I'm going to be speaking outside my lane, but I'm going to do it anyways. The ability to measure what you put into the canal and what you take out of the canal to feed to the farmer. The difference is what disappears. Director Ray.
So your question about it might look like that, and it's a good example of how urban canal might function and will optimize, but you have to think about these things as Nebraska's water portfolios. They all work together. We're in great position to continue to have the agricultural, municipal, all these successes because of how people continue to innovate in how we manage our water portfolio. So a comment, not a question.
That mindset where we can supply the needs for Nebraska, and that is important.
Any other questions for Devin? Okay, so you're handing it off back to Scott, is that correct?
Scott. I appreciate everybody's time. He's going to continue on with infrastructure and how we can parlay those dollars that we're going to expend on some of these infrastructure projects to take us even further.
All right, thanks, Devin. Well, I'm going to be talking a little bit closer to home. We've talked everything up the entire watershed, but there's some things, very exciting things that we have going on right in our own backyard here. You know, moving on to those long-term recharge agreements, we've got some things set up. We've got pipelines that we've invested in with partnerships with the Fish and Wildlife Service, with Tri-Basin, with the state. You know, we've got the canal system ready to take excess flows for recharge when they become available. We spent a lot of time doing it. Van down here spent a lot of time getting that ready, so we need to thank him too. Again, we talked about the long-term recharge agreements. So I'm going to step in and talk about Elwood Dam Seepage Mitigation Project. And I'm going to step it a little further and go to the E65 siphon project. And then I'll touch briefly on what we're doing to look forward. So Elwood Dam. Earlier I showed the excess flow and how much water was put into Elwood during that 2013, 2019 timeframe. The traditional use was to basically reserve water for irrigation. It was built in 45 years ago. The purpose was basically to reserve water to meet the irrigation demand. The siphons that supply Elwood can only carry 350 CFS. The E65 irrigation demand can be as much as 500 CFS. So water was pumped into Elwood and then released back for irrigation. Very simple. Had an elevation of 2607, live storage of 2570. So it holds, you know, a little bit of water, but just enough to make sure that all our farmers on 65 don't go without. Well, with the recharge, with the excess flows, it changed the way the reservoir was operated, and the elevation was kept higher for a longer period of time. So in making some improvements, they were putting a new building, I believe, over the pumps that go to Elwood, and when they cut into the bank, well, it wasn't what they wanted to see. And so, just to understand what they were seeing, they hired Central, before I was there, hired RJH, a consulting firm out of Colorado who specializes in dam repairs. And they determined that it was unsafe condition. And they looked at not just our pump station, but the whole dam itself. So here's a picture of Elwood. Here's the boat ramp. Here's some pickups with boat trailers. And this little area circled in yellow, this is our pump station. This is the building that they were putting on. And when they were doing that, they scraped off this bank right here. So you can kind of see the size of that. Bigger than, about the size of 2 pickups with boat trailers. I'm going to zoom in a little closer now. So, as you can see, when they were cutting back this bank, there's saturation all along here. You can see that line. And even further down, water started just coming out of the ground. And running a little bit out of the ground. So that was the unsafe condition. And all of a sudden, well, man, we gotta do something. And is it just the pump station? Well, they took a look at the back of the dam. Back of the dam was something that needed to be repaired too. So, things moved forward. They came up with a design plan. How are we going to protect this facility? Make sure our infrastructure is there for the future. It's important to recharge. It's essential to meet irrigation demand on E65. So, during the last few years since 19, the water level has been kept at a safe operating at 2570. We've got a final design completed. The estimated repair costs are $4 to $6 million. We've got some bids back this last week. We're evaluating them. Bill, that's probably in the ballpark. So stay tuned. We'll have some news coming out on getting that going. Construction, well, I would also mention that as part of the long-term recharge agreement, the program wanted $2 million to step in to help for that repair. We're going to start construction in July of 2023. We intend to be done a year later in July of 24. Okay, now I'm going to keep this in mind. This is all the engineers in here, Tyler, Cory, the director, Riley. This is going to be a very simplified explanation of the tow grain system. And I explained it all to my dad, he's 84, and then I explained it one other way and he said, got it. So, this is a fancy French drain. So, what it is it's a weighted filter blanket. The hatched area here is sand, fine sand. At the bottom of the fine sand, there's a perforated pipe. There's soil that goes over the top of the sand. It's the weight that keeps the sand in place. It's a weighted filter blanket. So what that does is safely captures the seepage and gets it away from the dam. And that's the fix. It's big, it's a big project. So in simplified terms, that's what it's going to look like. But it's very complicated in material management, making sure that the right material in the sand is there. We need people on site 100% of the time to help the contractor and make sure it's done perfectly. This is an important structure, and we want it for the next many years. I'm going to move on to the next project, the E65 siphon. What we have there is the delivery system. I mentioned just the 65 siphon's got a capacity of 350 CFS. Well, those siphons have been in service for 80 years, and there's a series of 3. There's 78 to 84 inch steel pipe, about 7,000 feet in total length. And over that time, if you're familiar with underground steel pipe, cathodic protection is necessary to keep rust and erosion off of there, and corrosion. Well, the cathodic protection no longer functions in this system. To extend the serviceability, Central coated those pipes and extended that time frame. But as with anything that gets old, it becomes tired. And after the Fort Laramie Gearing Tunnel collapse, it's time to take a hard look at what you have and what you're going to do. And if you're going to make that investment for the long term, do you continue to function it? A lot of engineering design life is 50 years. This dam's 45. This stuff's made at 80. It's a very important system. It provides that. All of E65, you've got the imported water supply credit that the state and the NRDs and the Republican supports them. And so we looked at this and go, okay. And the people at Central have taken a long look at this. I said, well, what could we do? What are some ideas? So they looked at, this is a better illustration here. If you're familiar with Johnson Lake, water for the E65 system starts at the inlet. It runs south along the edge of Johnson Lake, and it continues south, and then it hits some canyons, and it runs through one of the existing siphons. In red, it goes to an open canal, then through another existing siphon, open canal, existing siphon, until it comes back, and this is the pump station where water's pumped into the lake and then released back out. So there's a lot of distance there. Now the new proposal and idea is to go, man, we could just take a shortcut, and the yellow here would be an open canal, the white would be a siphon, and then back to an open canal system, and just go directly into Elwood. Then we're not dealing with pumping it, and we're not dealing with quite the length. And I believe this is probably a mile shorter. Was kind of like, well, we better take a hard look at this. What else do we do? Do we keep fixing the old stuff? So we hired a firm to do a preliminary engineering report. And they took a look at it, and I guess here's some details. They took a look at it, said, this thing will function. Our staff of engineers, QA, QC'd it, felt comfortable that this is something that can work and will work. So, some details of it, about 5,500 feet of root canal, under 5,500 feet of siphon. It's gravity flowed, would have a capacity of 400 CFS, maybe a little more than that. And one thing we looked at in consideration was HDPE, solid wall, large diameter pipe. It's got a lifespan closer to, we're understanding, about 100 years. It's some big stuff, it's neat. And Tyler and I spent some time going out and looking at this to get our own on-hands interpretation of it. It was one of the reservoirs in Wyoming I'm familiar with, in the highest part of the mountain. They used it as their penstock. So it's gaining a lot of confidence. And so we moved forward and said, you know, this is a good opportunity for us. With that, we went and applied. It's an expensive project. And so we applied for a grant from the Nebraska Water Sustainability Fund, administered by the Nebraska Resources Commission, another partner, very important partner. And they awarded us $8.9 million to help support this infrastructure investment. The original estimated cost was, I think, $15.9 million. Some of the pipe resin has gone up with what we looked at, so it's up probably closer to $20 million. At this point, the status is we've selected an engineering firm, JDO and HDR. And so we're having a kickoff meeting this week. We're excited. So this project's off the ground now. It'll be a year of studying and engineering, and then we're going to move into selecting a contractor and moving ahead. You know, the Elwood Complex, you know, we're looking at a dam seepage mitigation project completed in 2024. We've got, you know, we've got our own money, we've got partners. E65, very important. Again, if this thing goes down, we're all going to know it's not going to be good. But we're going to solve that problem by investing in our infrastructure for the next 10 years. CNPPID is going to provide $11 million at this time. Water Sustainability Fund, $9 million. Again, secures the water delivery to the E65 system. And it allows for these long-term recharge projects to deliver. One other thing I'm going to touch on here is looking ahead to our irrigators, to our customers. Is we've been spending a lot of time looking at an automated gate system similar to what the Frenchman-Cambridge Irrigation District has. That's also been supported with partnerships like the state of Nebraska and Water Sustainability, the Bureau of Reclamation, and the Boswick Irrigation District, who's also looked at their automation system, and that's been supported by the Bureau of Reclamation and the lower Republican NRD. So we're taking a hard look at this. You know, our system was put in 80 years ago. It's a lot of turning gates, a lot of things have been learned. But what we know right now is that our customers like to be on a boat on Saturday, fishing, maybe having an iced tea, and they like to turn on their irrigation well. That's the convenience. And that's where our customer service is going towards. And now we have spent this last fall going through and evaluating every structure on our system. We've got more to do. The snow will slow us down, and the ice. And it probably will until it melts. But we're happy about that because we dealt with corn checks a year ago. We don't want to deal with those things. But the on-field technology that the producers are putting out there, I mentioned the efficiency gains that they've had. But they're looking at variable rate irrigation, swing arms on the pivot corners, you know, on demand. Everything's from your phone. And that's where Central's going. That's our infrastructure improvement. We're itemizing what we have to do and how to get there. We're talking about how this is going to work in our entire system. You know, but it changes our focus on customer service. rather than maybe a canal management. You know, you get one of the canals and you got 4 or 5 variable rates and they all have swing arms and you got to adjust the water. So that'll be fixed. And we'll move ahead. So we're looking at that sustainability. That keeps water coming in, that keeps our customers where we want them. But you know, if you're looking at sustainability through infrastructure investments, I'm going to go here. It allows the stabilization of the water resources supply. By retiming it, it secures our reserves between the wet and dry times. We have water in the ground, we have water above the ground. We see that water not in the lake. You know, everyone sees that beach. And so we're doing with that 20% pie chart that I showed earlier. These are the things that we're doing at Central, and we're excited. And this is fun stuff. And it's moving ahead. And I think the next thing is we can look at it from our own spot, you know, right here in Central Nebraska. But there's a bigger macro game to be had. You know, I went all the way from our infrastructure down to our canal deliveries with the Rubicon gates. But now let's take a harder look at the whole system. We're going to jump back up. Cory's going to talk about discussions that have big water gains that ultimately would come back to our area that benefit all these people. Again, through the partnerships and agreements, we can create achievements. So I'm going to give it to Cory, and he's going to talk a lot more about this. Hopefully you guys can hear me.
Trying to be loud to start with. So you heard a lot of good stuff. I get to wrap the flow right after lunch. Everybody's glassy-eyed. I appreciate all that. So to talk about how to do all these things, get these things together. So we talked about a unified plan. We tried to get with everyone in the basin to come up with a unified plan. Now I'm going to try to simplify it because this thing is very large and very detailed. But we're trying to find solutions to Nebraska's Platte Basin. And I'd say to many or all of those. If we can get to all, that'd be very impressive. If we can get many or just a few, that's even acceptable. We get there, and we have to do that all in a single plan is what we're attempting to do. Good now? Yep. So we've had plenty of meetings over the last few years. I think before COVID and coming after it, but the partners list is here. It's the state, Director Riley and his crew, Central, CNPPID, and then a bunch of NRDs, South Platte NRD, North Platte, Twin Platte, Tri-Basin, and Central Platte. So all the groups that are in the basin, the maps that Devin showed and everything else, we have been meeting trying to come up with a plan to try to get all these issues solved. Everybody has a little bit different issue, but how do we make those and make all those work together? And if anyone knows how to get all those organizations in a room and hammer something out, yeah, no problem, right? And everybody's got their own agenda. Everybody's got something they want. So that's why there's probably been many meetings and we'll continue. The DNR was the one that kind of started this process, I think even before Director Riley. But some of the things that we heard and they asked for us to do was encourage win-win situations. Or come up with win-win solutions for everybody. Let's go with a Nebraska win solution. You know, let the state of Nebraska win by this. And then go ahead and think outside the box. You know, you can take some crazy ideas and things to work out to get there in the end. So Central got to work, so we put on our thinking cap. In reality, I think we had a lot of meetings and not a lot moving. So finally, give Devin some credit. He said, let's come up with something. It might not stick, it may not be what we end up with, but let's throw something out there. So that's what we did. So this is where I really tried to simplify it because this was 2 or 3 slides and very many points, and I tried to do it to a real easy process. So plan concepts. One is the plot program. The plot program is they have water goals. So let's help them reach their goals. Fully appropriated status. The NRDs want to get to fully appropriated. My generic words are fully appropriated as we've maximized the uses for the amount of water we got. The uses match the amount of water we got. We're working to get there. And then the final concept is how do we protect and efficiently and effectively manage that limited supply. So that's just not surface water, right? We have more than one supply. We have groundwater supply and surface water supply. So how do we use that? How do we manage that in a way that we're fully appropriate? Everybody can get their uses done. So it's this partnership, it's these agreements. How do we make everybody work together? So start with the plot program. They have a goal of 120,000 acre feet. That's just, it's calculated in many different ways, but that's their goal. They're not quite there yet. But we have some projects that are already putting water in that account. We talked about that a little bit earlier about the release of environmental account water. It's in McConaughey, some of that water. We'll continue to add that. We have some projects that are doing that. We'll continue those. We'll negotiate the remaining water needs. So they have a little bit left. That's roughly 10,000 right now. We'll talk about how we get them to their goal of 120,000. So that takes kind of that regulatory side and gets that done. They have an issue with the environmental account in McConaughey. We've kind of put a clause in there that when McConaughey fills, their account goes to 100,000 no matter what. It goes up or it goes down. It's just kind of a protection piece when we first did this. It kind of encourages them to run water so they don't lose it. So we want to get rid of that. Let's use that water more efficiently and smarter. So we're willing to possibly release or reset, get rid of that reset and just let them keep their water. There is a cap still, so it's not like they can have it all McConaughey, so there is a cap. So that kind of takes care of the plot program, what they're looking at. That'll be our goals on that. Fully appropriated status. We have to mutually agree across all the parties that I talked about that we're fully appropriate. And this is what the NRDs really want, right? They have to do projects to get there. So we want to agree that they're there. In my words, and the agreement with this is they'll continue to do what they're doing. All the NRDs have done projects to get to what they need to be. I'm throwing some big words here. They've had things they've had to do. We want to keep doing what we've done. But if we can get regulatory certainty, we can all agree we're there, then my words are, we're good, right? We're good. We're done. We're good. Don't have to do any more. And that's kind of where we want to be, is that the NRDs have the ability to say, we're done doing projects for now. And I say for now because they're a future check-in. Science is better, models are better, we'll check in where we're at, and we've got to really see if these plans will work. They can't just be one and done, we have to really make sure that they're going to work for the long term. But that helps with the NRD side and the state side. Get the fully appropriated, that we don't do a lot more projects and go chasing water. And then the last part is protect and efficiently manage our limited water supplies. So this is where Central's coming in and saying, how do we get some water? So one is we have FERC diversion requirements. We have to release water in the winter. They showed the pie chart earlier, the red piece, that we have to release that right now. And we look at that and we say, does science say that's the best? Do you just release it all winter or not? So there should be some times when maybe you don't need to. Maybe we can change the shape of when we release that. But do we really need to release all of that in the winter just to go downstream if it's not doing a benefit? So that is that. Reduce winter Lake McConaughey releases. Can we store more to use it in the last one, right? Scott showed the piece where we're using all that water in the summer and the irrigation season. So can we save some in the winter to release it during irrigation? And then do some projects. So we looked at this and one we just talked about, right? The 10-year project, that has now come. So this was part of the plan when we started, and now we've actually signed those long-term recharge agreements. Another one is infrastructure improvements. It's kind of been our whole talk, is about how to do more infrastructure. So we're looking at ways to improve CNPPID system, our system, maybe use some canals, but how do we get better? How do we do more projects that we talked about today to save some water? And finally, we looked at conjunctive management programs. And what are those? That is ways to conjunctively manage waters through surface water, groundwater, different kind of projects. So one of those is dual systems, dual connection systems to surface water and groundwater. This is having customers that have access to both surface water and groundwater. That is a reliable source, right? You can't say we're always going to have surface water. We've been to times where Central was close to saying we weren't going to deliver. But if you had a well, you had a source, right? If you didn't, you might have been out. But we've worked with the programs to transfer water to help out allocations. But what if that day comes we have nothing to deliver? We need that source. We kind of want that across the basin, right? Because everybody wants to irrigate. And then the management plan. You do all these things together and you have a plan, right? How much water do we have? What source do we use? Who uses what? So that all comes with a plan. And this is the big piece of the unified plan, but it is there. So when we talk about dual connection and integrated management, we've got these areas, and I believe Devin pretty much showed these. So where's the top? So these canals are up here, and then we've got some canals right here, and then we're talking about here. So we're working on this right now with trying to get a grant with 3 NRDs in Central, to see if we can get some benefits or some cost matching or some conjunctive management and some dual connections. Devin talked about some of the hydrology here, right? We have some lower groundwater levels here. We've got some canals that have kind of lost some acres over the years, not quite as much. We've got that same issue in here, in this area. So our canal is here, it is high. Devin showed the map, right? The graph. Our canal's here, leaking water back. In between that is canals, another canal, and then irrigation lands, and then back to the river. So there is a lot of groundwater recharge in this area to help us. So we look at that and we say, is there times when these canals can maybe go to groundwater? When Lake McConaughey doesn't have as much source, can we switch to those? And then that also comes down here too, right? If we don't have the water, we're going to need to go to that piece. But it's the conjunctive management is being able to use surface water and groundwater and make a plan to make that last, right? So we can try to extend the water supply, protect it, and use it efficiently. So you saw this earlier, this is that slice. So really what we're trying to do when we're trying to get that water and protect it and efficiently management is these are the kind of things we're talking about, right? Can we take a little bit of this and not release that in the winter? Conjunctive management on central system and those other canals, right? These other pieces. Can we get a little bit of that? Can we not use that water that's coming out? Just save it for another year. Extend the supply and Lake McConaughey in bad years, because this is where we are right now. It's been nice to have a plan like this before we got to where we are. Now this is where we are, so this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to save as much water as we can and protect it for future times. That may be using some groundwater. But that comes to the other side too. When Lake McConaughey is full, how many people can we get to surface water? How many people can go? Don't use your well, please. Go to surface water. And we're working on some incentives to do that. How do we get some grants? How do we get some matching funds to help our customers across the entire basin be able to hook up to both? But it does take our customers and customers around the basin to be willing to do that, right? Yeah, it's a little bit more infrastructure, but I need to do my part. When there's a lot of surface water, let's use it. And we don't, we need to go into the tap in the ground and around the wells here. But you heard it, wrap it all up, right? We're working on getting another source. If we can get the south pipe, that just helps this puzzle right here. So that's the unified plan. Get the program ready to go, get the NRDs to fully appropriate it, and try to do some projects in here to help extend the water supply. All these partners together for one big plan. So there's your IPA for the day. Probably need one after all that, don't you?
Thank you, Cory. Questions for Cory or Scott? Way in the back, Sergeant.
So when you're talking dual sources for a hookups, well water and canal water, you're going to have trigger points. Is that what the idea would be?
Yes, the idea would be to come up with a plan with all the groups to say, don't just make a statement like McConaughey today, maybe we're partial, right? We're on our way down, it's not looking good. Would we do a mix? There would be a time when Central says, we don't have it, or all the partners say, we don't have it. Let's just let McConaughey recover for a year and everyone's going to wells. It sounds great, right? I think the hard part is once we get someone to a well, how to get them to go back to surface water. We got to have people commit. We got to have people willing to help us get this system dual conjunction, conjunctively managed. So if that's any words I've got is if we do a program like this, we need people willing to say, yes, I will do my part and I'll take surface water when we got it. So we'd like to bring it here. It's got to work both ways. We can't go just one way or this where we're going to go the wrong direction. Great question. Great.
It's probably for Scott, and I'm not Director Riley on the spot. But on the Elwood project, in the water that goes back in Plum Creek, it intentionally be the offset for those that come out of Plum Creek.
Okay, I'm going to repeat this question. So the water that's seeking out of Elwood Reservoir and it goes into Plum Creek, can that be used for offsets?
Well, yeah, it's going to come out of Green Tile and go into Plum Creek. Am I correct?
It will discharge out and eventually go through Plum Creek.
Yeah,
seepage. So I'm going to defer that to a water rights expert and pump that question. You know, again, this is water that's been moved down from Lake McConaughey for irrigation. It's part of the loss. As it goes out, it's conveyance loss too. Well, if John wants to take a shot, or Cory, I'm gonna punt.
It's unanswered.
Thank you.
Well, the simple answer would be, we can't take credit for anything we were already doing before 1997. And so the more complicated answer is, does that seepage out of Elwood count as a pre-1997 activity, or does the changes to Elwood Reservoir and the improvements to the drainage under the dam count as a new activity? So, yeah, it's something that remains to be resolved.
I could say this, is it's seeping now. We're just gonna catch it safely. From not going up the back.
Other questions for Cory or Scott? Okay, if not, thank you very much, gentlemen. Good presentation.